Just checking that you're all awake. You're welcome.
You guys know the drill.
Procrastinators videos!
Woo! We will now discuss how the presidency has evolved over time and the various factors that have changed the office.
We start with good old George Washington, who was...
The unanimous choice for president in 1788.
True dat!
Upon taking office, Washington set numerous precedents for the 42 other men who would hold the office.
Washington established the traditions of the inaugural address, the annual State of the Union address, and the farewell address.
Washington also established the cabinet system and held regular cabinet meetings with the heads of each executive department.
Finally, Washington, in part, defined his role as chief executive when he sent ambassadors overseas to negotiate treaties, such as the Jay Treaty. He put the Senate in its place, noting that only he had the power to make treaties. The Senate could only approve them.
Thomas Jefferson expanded the power of the presidency when he authorized the Louisiana Purchase in 1803, which is technically unconstitutional, but he did it anyway because land and also Iowa, my home state!
Iowa? What the heck is Iowa? Next we go to the old hickory, Andrew Jackson, who after being elected in 1828 drastically increased the power of the presidency.
Jackson popularized the spoils system, using his appointment power to replace officials with his political allies.
In 1830, Jackson signed the Indian Removal Act and later ignored the Supreme Court, which called the Indian Removal Act unconstitutional.
Now we move all the way to 1961 because all the presidents in between suck.
Abraham Lincoln was elected president in 1960 and was so awesome that within a year, all the Southern Belt states seceded and made their own country.
Despite being ranked the best U.S. president, Lincoln authorized numerous unconstitutional policies to simply keep the North unified in the war effort.
For example, Lincoln raised armies, spent money without congressional appropriation, freed slaves in the South, and even suspended some civil rights such as habeas corpus.
It's safe to say that Lincoln used his powers as commander-in-chief to overstep the Constitution and generally do whatever he felt was necessary to maintain the Union and to win the Civil War.
Now we skip all the forgotten presidents of the late 1800s to President Theodore Roosevelt, who assumed the presidency after William McKinley died in 1901.
Roosevelt had a run with McKinley on the progressive Republican ticket, and once he was president, took a harsh stance against the giant corporations and trusts that dominated the economy and government.
Roosevelt expanded his executive powers. He went around the country destroying giant corporations with his so-called antitrust hammer. Roosevelt also pioneered the environmental conservation movement and took action to make sure that businesses didn't, destroy everything in sight.
Now we skip 4 years to the election of Woodrow Wilson in 1912.
Wilson was the first president since Lincoln to use his formal power to convene Congress. A brilliant orator, Wilson convened Congress regularly and gave speeches which enabled him to help shape the congressional agenda.
Upon the U.S. entrance into World War I, Wilson passed the Alien Act of 1917 and the Sedition Act of 1918, both of which restricted civil liberties and attempted to protect the war effort.
Wilson eventually used his popularity to push his 14 points and his idea of the League of Nations. The League ended up succeeding internationally and reaffirmed Wilson's power.
No, it didn't.
Well, sort of.
It failed.
Yeah,
epically.
well, the U.S. didn't join because Congress said no, but...
They created the League, and then the U.S. did not join it. It was essentially like, guys, we should create a club. Then the leader didn't create the club, join the club.
Wilson was the first president to create an international organization. That is, by definition, expanding the power of the presidency.
Yes, but the League wasn't an international success.
Well, it sort of was.
And now we move to the U.S. president who single-handedly changed how we view the government and how it operates.
Franklin D. Roosevelt was elected in 1932 and immediately got to work championing his New Deal, which was his plan to combat the Great Depression.
He created dozens of agencies, commissions, and other organizations working to stabilize the U.S. economy and put Americans back to work.
FDR also pushed his agenda through his fireside chats, which were broadcasted by radio. This allowed FDR to gain significant popularity and to manipulate Congress.
What really pulled the country out of the Depression was our entrance into World War II and the resulting war effort. FDR served as commander-in-chief for pretty much the entire war and used his popularity to expand his powers during the crisis.
Fast forward to 1963 when Lyndon B. Johnson was sworn in as president after the assassination of John F. Kennedy. Johnson continued expanding the bureaucracy, adding social programs and civil rights commissions as part of his Great Society agenda.
Extremely popular in his first 2 years as president, Johnson was quite successful at pushing his agenda through Congress and enacting many of his proposals.
However, Johnson most increased his presidential power when he invaded Vietnam without any congressional approval.
This actually led to the War Powers Act of 1973, which limited the president's ability to wage war without congressional approval.
Speaking of 1973, President Nixon and his Watergate scandal shaped the executive privilege.
After attempting to withhold information regarding the scandal from federal prosecutors, the Supreme Court further defined the executive privilege when they ruled against Nixon, who soon resigned before Congress could impeach him.
Looking back on U.S. presidential history, there are a few common trends you should know. 1. Crises always increase the power of the presidency.
Because Congress and the bureaucracy takes a lot of time, much of the power during crises shifts to the president to quickly and effectively manage the country's problems.
2. Presidents who are popular have much more power within the federal government. For example, Ronald Reagan, who's also known as the Great Communicator, was extremely popular and was thus a very powerful president, using his leadership to manipulate Congress and the bureaucracy.
Reagan's foreign policy is also crucial in ending the Cold War and shaping modern international policies.
And with that, we end our third installment of Procrastinators Videos!
Thanks you for watching. We hope you enjoyed.
Thanks you for watching. Thanks you.
Thanks
we thanks you for watching.
Thanks you for
and
watching.
as always, good luck procrastinating.
And